Alright, hello, good evening friends. I just went to close the curtains to film this video and discovered a spider had laid eggs in my curtain, and there was like this tumbling sack of hundreds of baby spiders in my curtain, and if that is not just an accurate snapshot of the past little bit, I don't know what is. Hi friends, my name is Emily and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my September reading wrap-up. Better late than never. September was not a great month, and it was the cherry on top when the company that I worked for announced that they had laid off 23 people effective immediately, and then 16 people, myself included, at the end of December. And it's October 7th as I'm filming this. It's been 10 days of me digesting this information, so I am going to talk to you about the 4 things that I read in September, and they were all okay. The first thing that I read was Drowned Country by Emily Tesh. It's the sequel to Silver in the Wood. It's a pair of novellas called the Green Man duology, and I did a live stream on Silver in the Woods. I thought there were good ideas. I like her writing. I think she needs more space to flesh out these ideas. I think there was too much going on in too little space, even across 2 novellas. The first half of Silver in the Woods feels like it belongs to a completely separate story from the second half. The second half, however, does fit nicely in with the Drowned Country. So if you liked the second half of Silver in the Woods, where like alternative timeline, Victorian era vampire slayers, monster hunters exist, you will probably like the Drowned Country. We are following our monster hunters into fairyland. Again, good ideas. I think it's too much in too little space. I am not opposed to reading more by Emily Tesh if she has longer fiction released. If she comes out with a novel, I will definitely check it out because I like her writing and I like her ideas. If she comes out with more novellas, I don't think that short fiction is actually her strength. At least it's not what I'm looking for in short fiction. The world building overall feels really messy because it feels like there's a lot going on, but nothing super cohesive or satisfying. And I think having more space might benefit her. Like I do find that I am very picky about short fiction, and that short fiction is a very difficult thing to nail, and unfortunately, I don't think either novella is entirely successful just because of the limitations of the form. I think the ideas are there though. Would I recommend it? If you have these copies already in your collection, yes. If you can get a hold of them at the library, I'm sure that if you're into sort of the dark fairy tale fantasy vibes, this could tickle your fancy, but I would caution you that it is a little bit messy, that it's not the most fleshed out, but the vibes are good. So if you're down for mess plus exquisite vibes, sure, check out some Emily Tesh. I finished that on September 5th. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, and that was a new buy, which does follow my rules. It is a sequel. Then I had requested a couple of arcs back in my romance phase in like the spring. One of those is Back in a Spell, though it's a Witches of Thistlegrove novel in this romance series, and it's by Lana Harper. Its expected publication date is January 10th, 2023, and I did request an arc of this from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. Our protagonist is a pansexual old money, old bloodline witch and lawyer. Her name is Nina Blackmore, and she's recently been dumped by her girlfriend, and her best friend is like, you know what? You need to pick someone that doesn't meet your type. Like, let me pick for you. The best friend picks a non-binary person who is a normie, not a witch, and a dive bar co-owner named Morty. And the point of their get-together is just to like flirt and have fun, and like for her to forget about her ex, for Nina to forget about her ex. And they get along really well, they have really great sexual chemistry. However, Nina's family is trying to like buy up and own the whole town, and they've recently been like quite aggressively attempting to buy the bar that Morty's family owns, that he's sort of recently taken charge of, and so there's some sort of bad blood there. And then Nina wishes on the lake near the town, and there's a big flash, and suddenly she has super magic. She's not just a witch, she's a super witch. And her super witchness is like leaking into Morty. They're like soul bonded, so even though they're not really dating yet and they kind of aren't supposed to like each other because their families are mad at each other, they're gonna work together to figure out what's happening. And like it's fun. It is fun. And the thing that I kept thinking to myself while I was reading this was, this reads like YA with fucking. The reason that it reads like YA is because Lana Harper is the pseudonym of Lana Popovic. I've actually read one of her books before. I'll pop it on the screen. It's also witchy, and it's about sisters. It's perhaps not a good thing that this adult romance novel screams YA to somebody who like went into it not knowing that Lana Popovic had stepped into adult romance. That might bother you if you are an adult romance reader. If you're somebody moving from YA into adult romance, this could be totally fine. This could in fact be a selling feature, that this still feels like YA but with the kissing. It is a fun time. I would check out some of her other works. Nice for spooky season to have read this, to like move into fall reading something about witches. Finished that on September 9th. I rated that 4 out of 5 stars. That was an advanced reader copy. If it interests you, it's coming out on January 10th, 2023. Then I borrowed the highly hyped I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. This is the YA debut of McQuiston, the author of Red, White, and Royal Blue. So this follows Chloe Green, who is an openly queer girl. She's the daughter of lesbian moms. She has moved to this like very conservative Christian school, and she's like refused to go back in the closet, and there have been consequences for that during her high school experience. 1 month before graduation, Shara Wheeler kisses Chloe and leaves a very Paper Towns-esque sort of scavenger hunt of clues for her to investigate. It was fun. It was predictable. I really liked getting to see the queer rep in this text. We have characters questioning their sexuality, questioning their gender expression. I found it hard to root for Chloe. She is a selfish asshat, which, I mean, it could be because it's YA, and like, I don't know about you, but when I was a teenager, it was like everything was the Emily show, you know what I mean? Like, I think young people are often like that. It's very hard to be empathetic and to think about other people's positions. Like, it's, your brains haven't fully developed yet, right? And so it's something that I notice in quite a bit of YA now that can sometimes be annoying, is that young adult characters that are written too realistically are difficult to deal with, and I found our protagonist Chloe difficult. She's a terrible friend. She is so up her own ass. She treats her friend really shitty. Like, in the last few weeks, a month before graduation, she treats her best friend like dirt to go on this scavenger hunt for this girl that she's never really been friends with throughout high school. That selfishness might be realistic, but it's also hard to root for a character like that. I'm glad I don't own a copy. I'm glad I borrowed a copy, because I would never read this again. If you're looking for something fun, something fluffy, something a little bit nostalgic, like if you grew up on John Green, if Paper Towns was a large part of your step into reading, this might be a fun, nostalgic read for you. If you are the target market, this might be a fun read for you. I finished that on September 11th. For what it is, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I did borrow that from the library. Then there's a huge gap in time, and I read Cujo during this time. So Cujo is the Red Rum Book Club, supposed to be for September, but I had to push the live show because of dealing with all the things that happened with getting laid off and having to like adjust my my like picture for the future. I hate to say this, Cujo is not good. This is a book that King admits that he cannot remember writing because he is at the height of struggling with alcoholism and addiction. In On Writing, he talks about how he's read it since, and there's some pretty fun moments in it, but he can't remember writing it. Like, that's how strung out he is. I also feel like by, I think it's published in 1981, by this point, King is probably big enough that nobody is taking a close hand to his manuscripts. It probably has like the Sarah J. Maas effect or the Cassandra Clare effect. Like, those authors can shit out a text and they know it will sell, so nobody needs to edit it all that closely, and that feels like Cujo to me. Parts of it I feel like have a lot of promise. So we're in a small town, we have two families. We have the Trentons, and they are a family of 3. They've recently moved to Castle Rock, so they're out-of-towners. They are middle class. We have Vic, who's a salesman, Donna, who's a housefrau having an affair, an existential crisis, and Tad, who is their 4-year-old or 5-year-old child. Then we have the mirror of the Trentons, the Cambers. They are long-time residents. They are blue collar. They live in the middle of nowhere. Joe is the father. He's an abusive mechanic. Charity is another housewife. And Brett is their 10-year-old son. They own Cujo. I feel like in many ways this should be a novel about the horrors of domesticity, the horrors of relationships, what happens when a relationship breaks down, abusive relationships. This feels like it should be about the people. It feels like it should be an exploration of how ugly humans are. At the same time, the rabid dog Cujo, I feel like we could keep that piece in. It's a result of the family being poor and working class, that Cujo has never gone to a vet, that Cujo has never had rabies medication of any sorts, and that's sort of what allows for everybody to be in this position, to have this massive dog be vulnerable to becoming rabid. I feel like that could have worked still. The bit that I don't like is the disconnected, the disjointed feeling spirit of Frank Dodd, who is haunting Tad's closet. So Frank Dodd is a serial killer in The Dead Zone, which we have read this year. The Dead Zone involves Johnny Smith like using his psychic powers to solve a crime at one point. The criminal is this terrible serial killer, Frank Dodd. For reasons, it is heavily implied that the ghost of Frank Dodd is living in Tad's closet, and it's just something that pops up every once in a while throughout Cujo, that like Tad's like, oh my god, there's a monster in the closet. The parents are like, stuff moves around. Like, did you move that blanket? I didn't move that blanket. And then at one point, the dad's in the house alone and he's like, this closet's freaking me out. And he shuts it and he latches it. And then like before his very eyes, the closet unlatches itself and he's like, Jesus fucking Christ, I can't deal with this. And there are just like little bits like that where, to me, the story should be about the people, about the families, about the horror of hurting each other, the horror of loving people, the horror of family ties, and the hurt that we can inflict on each other. And then there's just this like thing that should have been edited out. If we're really being unkind, if I'm really unkind, the rabid dog feels a little bit out of place too. Like, I can come up with reasons for it to be there, but for me, I think this story, the strength of this story are the characters. The reason I say that I feel like maybe this needed editing is that the writing itself was bad in places. There was like really weird grammatical things happening, that like really clunky, awkward sentences that like needed a second pass, needed a third pass, needed someone to be like, okay, break this thought down. Use better words. Can you take all of these little words and use a better big word? There were places where the same uncommon word was used like twice on one page in different contexts. There was something that was like morbidly this, and then a little bit down the page, something different was described as morbidly that. In reading that paragraph, morbid wasn't repeated twice for an effect. It really feels like lazy writing and poor, or maybe intoxicated writing and poor editing. There are like typesetting issues, like spacing issues in the text as well. Like this just looks like something slopped together and they were like, oh, it'll sell because it has Stephen King's name on it. And I mean, to their credit, they're not wrong. I mean, Cujo's still in print. It had a movie made, like, what, 4 years after, in 1985? Like, they're not wrong that it's a property that would sell. It's just not Stephen King's best work, shall we say. I think that there are common themes throughout his body of works that are worth exploring, that are interesting here, but I think overall it is a weak piece of writing. Understandably, the man has what, like 70 novels in his bibliography. Like, not all of them can be winners, especially things produced at the height of his addiction. To read Cujo and to reread Cujo to put notes together, it's especially stark that this is not good quality because I'm also rereading his most recent novel, Fairy Tale. It literally just came out this fall, and the quality in the two is vastly different. Like, still all the things that I love about Stephen King, the character work, the voice, the narrative voice, like that it's comforting when you expect a narrative voice and you get that. It's just the quality is so different to go from something early on in King's career to his most recent read, and it really makes Cujo look like a dull, dirty penny in comparison to Fairy Tale. So I am excited to try and get in the headspace, to try and, like, you know, dust the seat of my pants off. I was knocked down with this layoff in 3 months, you know? If this is your first video, this is probably a very tonally weird video. By the time that I edit this and this goes out on YouTube, I could be in a very different place. I usually have like a week delay between each video. Like, patrons get it first and then a week later YouTube gets it. So hopefully by the time that YouTube is seeing this, I've had a whole other week to process and I'm in a different place. At the very beginning of November, the date for which is on the screen, the book club that's open to everyone. It's The Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham, and we will be reading that together and discussing it. Thank you to patrons for your kind words. I did let patrons know because I had to move the Cujo live show. I couldn't, like 2 days after I'd had this bomb dropped, I could not get myself into a place to host a live show, you know? So I really thank patrons for being so understanding, for their kind words. It means a lot. Thank you all for watching. I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you're doing well, that you are staying safe, and I will see you soon with another video.